Namaskar. I'm Dr. Satya Paul, Associate Professor of English, Government National College, Sirsa. I'm here to deliver a lecture under the aegis of Director General Higher Education Haryana for undergraduate science classes. Today we shall study John Dryden's poem Shadwell. Let's first know the background and the circumstances under which this poem was written. Shadwell, which forms the title of our poem, is the name of a 17th century poet. John Dryden, who wrote this poem, was his contemporary, and the two poets had some personal dispute which took shape of bitter rivalry with passage of time. Dryden and Shadwell belonged to different political parties and opposite religious groups. Dryden was a Tory and Catholic, while Shadwell was a Whig and Protestant. Difference of political affiliation resulted in difference of ideologies and finally in literary rivalry. If one wrote a biting poem against the other always returned in the same coin. In this way, rivalry and bitterness existed lifelong. Anyhow, before we go deeper into this rivalry, let's know something about the poet John Dryden, who wrote the present poem Shadwell. John Dryden was born in 1631 and lived up to 1700. He was the eldest of 14 children born to Erasmus Dryden and his wife Mary Pickering. He was an English poet, critic, translator, and playwright all in one. He was a respected figure of the Restoration period and was raised to be England's first poet laureate in 1668. Along with Alexander Pope, he dominated the Restoration period, or you can say Neoclassical period. Dryden's work includes Absalom and Achitophel, The Medal, MacFlecknoe. The present poem Shadwell, which is prescribed in our syllabus, is a part of this poem. MacFlecknoe is a very long poem, and Shadwell, some lines, one incident has been taken from this larger poem. Apart from this, a song for St. Cecilia's Day and Alexander's Feast, these are some other works written by John Dryden. Now let's read the poem line by line. Shadwell, written by John Dryden. All human things are subject to decay, and when fate summons, monarchs must obey. All human things. John Dryden says all human things are subject to decay. He tells us a philosophical truth that we all are to die, like Lord Krishna telling Arjun, जिसका जन्म हुआ है उसकी मृत्यु निश्चित है. And when fate summons, it means when death calls, even kings cannot refuse. Monarchs must obey. Monarchs means kings. जब यमदूत आते हैं तो बादशाहों को भी जाना पड़ता है. When death calls, kings have to obey. Here fate appears with a capital letter. Look at in the second line, the third word, fate. Fate with a capital letter. Why? Fate comes with a capital letter because fate has been personified here. What do we mean by personified? It means when we treat an inanimate thing or abstract idea as human beings, we call it personification. For example, if I say the flower smiles, a flower cannot smile. A flower cannot smile. Smiling is a characteristic of human beings only. Even animals cannot smile. I say the flower smiles. I personify a flower. The feature of human being, which is a characteristics of human beings only, I give it to the flower. It means personification. Now, all human things are subject to decay, and when fate summons, monarchs must obey. All human things, all Dryden could have written all human beings. Poetically, that would have been right, but he deliberately writes the word things. Why? It is interesting because for Dryden, Shadwell does not belong to the category of human beings. Rather, he is a thing. See, Shadwell is fat and brainless according to Dryden, and he is nothing less than a thing. That is why he says all human things. Beginning is very interesting because Dryden begins the poem with a philosophical truth that death is inevitable. It is an epical opening where universal truth begins the poem. Fate has been personified, and human beings, especially Shadwell, has been equaled with things. Now let's move to the next couple of lines. This Flecknoe found, who, like Augustus Young, was called to empire and had governed long. This Flecknoe found means Flecknoe the emperor, who was like King Augustus, became an emperor when he was very young, and he governed his kingdom for a long time. Here Shadwell's comparison with Augustus is ironic. This Flecknoe sounds disgusting, as if Dryden doesn't like Flecknoe. He uses the phrase this Flecknoe. This Flecknoe found, who like Augustus Young was called to empire and had governed long. Comparison between Augustus and Flecknoe. Why is it ironic? Comparison is at two levels. The first one is the two emperors, Flecknoe and Augustus. They became kings when they were very young. Second comparison is Augustus was a very powerful king and he had no rival, no equal in power. In more heroic terms, Shadwell too has been called unmatched, a king with no rival, a poet with no equal to him so far as his stupidity is concerned. This is in more heroic terms that Dryden compares the two. Augustus was a Roman emperor. It is said that Flecknoe was also a poetaster, Poetaster, poetaster. What is a poetaster? Poetaster is an unskilled poet who does not have poetic qualities. Still, he attempts to write poetry. And this Flecknoe, he was a poetaster of 17th century Ireland, known for his dullness and stupidity. So, Dryden in these lines compares Flecknoe to Augustus. If he compares, then certainly it is a simile. And he makes an ironic comparison. The two kings, they came to their kingdom very early and governed their kingdom for a long time. Mock heroic tone is there. Mock heroic tone, I mean, it is a satirical tone. Prose and verse was owned without dispute through all the realms of nonsense absolute. This aged prince, now flourishing in peace and blessed with issue of Allah's increase. Increase. Yes, this word is increase, not increase. It is not z sound, it is s sound. Similarly, in decrease, it is not decrease, it is decrease. In prose and verse was owned without dispute. MacFlecknoe was a champion in dullness and stupidity. I don't say, Dryden says. MacFlecknoe was a champion in dullness and stupidity. He was thought to be undisputed emperor of the kingdom of nonsense. While MacFlecknoe was ruling his empire successfully, he was blessed with a large number of sons. In prose and verse was owned without dispute through all the realms of nonsense absolute. In every field, the king Flecknoe was without dispute the best. In all the realms of nonsense absolute, in nonsense and stupidity, he was a perfect person. What Dryden calls him in the next line, the aged prince. Mismatched. Can a prince be aged? No, cannot be. This aged prince, because he wants to make fun of the king MacFlecknoe, that's why he says aged prince. वो हिंदी में कहते हैं ना बूढ़ी घोड़ी लाल लगाम, just like that. Aged prince, that he is aged, still he considers himself very young. Perhaps this is what Dryden means here. The aged prince, now flourishing in peace. Flourishing means progressing. It was a peaceful time and the king was flourishing. He was blessed with a large number of children and blessed with the issue of a large increase. What Dryden points out here is that he was a king of nonsense and like a fool produced a large number of children, means followers like himself. Shadwell, like himself, he made many more poets of his own quality. Here the tone is satirical, and again if you look at the lines, then dispute absolute, this is one couple, and peace increase, this is another couple. The whole poem has been written in couplets. The two conjunctive lines will rhyme together, and this is heroic couplet with a little variation in a few cases. Apart from that, all lines are iambic pentameter lines. The poet tries to make fun of Shadwell, calls him aged prince, Flecknoe, indirectly to Shadwell, and satirical tone is visible here. Worn out with business, did at length debate to settle the succession of the state. Because of his busy business of producing children or of ruling the kingdom of nonsense, he was worn out. He was tired, worn out with business, did at length debate to settle the succession of the state. At length means in detail. Debate means argue. Now he began to argue with himself in detail how to choose his successor. And pondering which of his sons was fit to reign and wage immortal war with wit, he pondered over. He thought deeply. Pondered means thought deeply which of his sons was fit to rule his kingdom. Reign means to rule. R-E-I-G-N. This word is pronounced as rain. It is a homophone of the word R-A-I-N, जिसका मतलब होता है बरसात. Rain. Homophone. Homo means same. Phone means sound. Homophones means similar sounds. Words pronounced similarly but with different spelling and meaning, they are called homophones. Okay? Which of all his sons was fit to reign and wage immortal war with wit? He tries to find out which one of his sons was the greatest enemy of wisdom, who could wage permanent war with wit. Means which of his sons was a fool and who could fight with wisdom. Here in these lines, background has been taken from historical fact. May I tell you, in England there was a dispute over the issue of succession in Dryden's day. Background has been taken from that historical fact, and these lines where the king is tired of producing children and of ruling his kingdom of nonsense. Here is a satire, a comic situation is created here. Cried, it's resolved, for nature pleads that he should only rule who most resembles me. Now he argues with himself. Finally, he reaches a conclusion. When he reaches a conclusion, when he reaches the destination, he cries out of happiness. Dryden says he cried, cried. He is missing and he is understood. Cried, it's resolved, for nature pleads that he should only rule who most resembles me. It is ludicrous. When he reaches the destination, he cries. It's comic. Why does he cry? Look at the use of this word cried. When one reaches a destination after long thought, does he cry? Anyhow, he cried. It's resolved. Solution has been found out. He argues that according to the law of nature, nature pleads. According to law of nature, the son who resembles him most should only rule who most resembles me. The son who resembles him most, who takes after him, should rule his kingdom. He says, one who is like me in physical appearance, he should rule my state of, my kingdom of nonsense. Shadwell alone, my perfect image bears, mature in dullness from his tender years. Shadwell alone of all my sons is he who stands confirmed in full stupidity. The king argues and gives reasons for his selection of the successor. He asserts, Shadwell alone my perfect image bears. What does it mean? It means Shadwell exactly looks like him. He takes after him. Physically, he appears to be similar to him. And it is again Shadwell who is mature in dullness right from his early age. And above all, it is Shadwell who stands confirmed in stupidity. These three qualities. First quality, that he looks like him. Second quality, that he is dull, mature in dullness. And third, that he is fully stupid. He is a confirmed fool. After all, he needs such great qualities for a ruler of his kingdom of nonsense. Since it is a kingdom of nonsense, he needs such a king. All such qualities are found in Shadwell. That's why he chooses Shadwell as his successor. So look at the contrast, mature and tender in one sentence. Use of these opposites. It's a very common feature of poetry to use such opposites. The rest to some faint meaning make pretense, but Shadwell never deviates into sense. Some beams of wit on other souls may fall, strike through and make a lucid interval. Other sons may sometimes make pretense of having some sense. The rest means others, to some faint meaning. The other poets may have some meaning of their poetry. They may pretend to have some meaning of poetry, but Shadwell never does anything sensible. Whatever he writes is nonsense, says Dryden. The rest to some faint meaning make pretense, but Shadwell never deviates into sense. He goes straight away into nonsense. Means other writers may have brief fits of intelligence and wisdom, but Shadwell was totally bereft of these luxuries. Therefore, some beams of wit on other souls may fall, strike through and make a lucid interval. Others may have some intelligence in them, but Shadwell is totally empty. But Shadwell's genuine night admits no ray. His rising fogs prevail upon the day. Shadwell deserves the throne of kingdom of nonsense. Look at the word faint, which means weak. Lucid means sensible. Sensible. Interval means break. Others may pretend to be meaningful. Rays of intellect may fall on others, but not on Shadwell. But Shadwell's genuine night admits no ray. His rising fogs prevail upon the day. Shadwell's foolishness is like a dark night. No ray of wisdom can pass through it. Even during the day, his stupidity prevails like a thick cover of fog. Dryden means Shadwell is totally empty of wisdom. He has no sense, he is totally nonsense. Dryden uses metaphors for intelligence and stupidity. Night and fogs are metaphors of dullness and stupidity, whereas ray and day, they stand for intelligence, wit and wisdom. Metaphors and alliteration are the main features, poetic devices used in these lines. Metaphors include day, which stands for intelligence and wit. Night and fogs stand for dullness and stupidity. Besides, his goodly fabric fills the eye, and seems designed for thoughtless majesty, thoughtless as monarch oaks that shade the plain, and spread in solemn state supinely reign. Now, after analyzing Shadwell's intellectual skills, Dryden comes to his physical appearance. You can look at the picture of Shadwell. He was quite fatty, and Dryden comes to his physical appearance. Shadwell's fat body, easily attracts attention. It appears that his huge body has been designed for thoughtless royal figure. Continuing his satirical attack on Shadwell, Dryden argues that his huge body is like a gigantic oak. Besides, means apart from this, his goodly fabric fills the eye. His huge body attracts the eye and seems designed for thoughtless majesty. Here, a common perception that fat people lack in intelligence and they are not sharp and brilliant. It is a common perception, though it is not true. You must have seen fatty doctors, engineers, and even players. In Jamam ul Haq, how easily he played fast bowlers. Uh, Run out is a separate thing, though. But he was a great player. Certainly, he was a great player. So there can be people can be intelligent despite their fatty body. So here Dryden says that like the huge oak, Shadwell was dull and he was not dynamic. He is like a huge oak which spreads over a large area and does not let rays of sun reach the ground under it. Thoughtless as monarch oaks, he was brainless like an oak and shade the plain. Shade the plain means doesn't let sunlight reach there and spread in solemn state, silently spread itself on a large area, supinely reign. Supinely means lazily. He lazily ruled his kingdom. Shadwell says Dryden, he was like an oak tree which spreads over a vast area and doesn't let sunlight reach the ground under it. Similarly, Shadwell's foolishness does not allow wisdom to reach his followers. Again, like the monarch oak, Shadwell is undynamic and lazy. Here, thoughtless as monarch oaks. A simile has been used in this line because here oak has been compared with Shadwell, Shadwell with oak. Alliteration, there is a beautiful alliteration in the last line. Sir, sir sound. Look at the sir sound beginning, which begins every word. Spread in solemn state, supinely reign. Here alliteration has been used. Heywood and Shirley were but types of thee, thou last great prophet of tautology. Dryden considers foolish writers like Thomas Heywood and James Shirley only Shadwell's shadows. Heywood and Shirley, these two writers were contemporary to Shakespeare. They were Elizabethan writers and they were reasonably good writers and hardly deserved the kind of contempt Dryden reserved for them. Various critics, including the famous essayist Charles Lamb, they have praised these Elizabethan writers, Heywood and Shirley, but Dryden has equated them with Shadwell. Dryden must have some kind of hate for these writers, and that is why he equals them to Shadwell. He considers Shadwell as the last prophet of tautology. Tautology means repetition, repeating the same thing. Here it means art of saying same thing in different and vague, unclear ways without any clear meaning. Dryden means to say that Shadwell had no ideas for writing literature and he only repeated what others said. That is why he says he uses an apostrophe thou, thou last great prophet of tautology. You have repeated what others have said. Now, what do you say? What purpose this poem serves? This poem is criticizing Shadwell, a particular person, and becomes universal in criticizing Shadwell. In criticizing Shadwell, it criticizes all bad poets. Perhaps in Dryden's time, there must have been many bad poets who considered themselves poets, and others say they are not poets, they were not good poets, and who had nothing to say, and they repeated whatever others said. So this is what Dryden says about Shadwell in this poem. Now I have some questions for you. Try to answer them. My first question is, whom does Flecknoe choose as his successor? Whom does Flecknoe choose his successor and why? Second question, to which period of literature does Dryden belong? Third question is, which of Dryden's poetic skills does Dryden highlight? Question number 4, From which longer poem has the poem Shadwell been extracted? Question number 5. What poetic device has been used in the expression thoughtless as monarch oaks? Question number 6. But Shadwell never deviates into sense. Shadwell never deviates into sense. What does it mean? Question number 7. What does Dryden compare Shadwell with? What are the similarities between these two? Question number 8. What is tautology? Try to answer these questions. Thank you very much for watching this video. Happy learning.